So the CHRYSALIS-2 study is a very complicated study and has looked at a lot of different things in the world of EGFR. So specifically that was presented was Cohort C, and this is looking at patients with atypical EGFR mutations. So not the exon 19s, not the exon 21s. Some examples are the G719Xs, S786, L861Qs, which there's not a clear standard of care right now. So the standard of care for that, depending on how you feel, is either osimertinib, which is actually off-label for that, or afatinib, which is a relatively rough drug. In my experience, it's about 50-50. So this was looking at the combination of amivantamab plus lazertinib. So to remind everybody, amivantamab is a EGFR MET bispecific antibody, and lazertinib is a TKI very similar to osimertinib, and there's been substantial data showing that it's very similar to that one. So it's looking at the efficacy of patients treated with Ami-Laz in the frontline setting versus matched real-world control patients with atypical EGFR mutations. We don't know. So we don't know why these patients are worse. Is it that their biology is worse? That might be. It also might be that of the two drugs, osimertinib by itself may not be the best drug for them, and that's probably largely the case. Or is it something related to toxicity? For example, afatinib, which is already FDA approved for this, does have a lot of dose reductions, and there's some debate amongst clinicians about where you start patients on that. So there's a lot of reasons that go into why these patients may do worse with the currently approved drugs. We don't fully understand, but I suspect it's just because it's a harder disease to treat, and the current standard TKIs don't work as well. This is not a randomized comparison. This is a comparison versus real world data, which is the best that we can do. This was a signal finding study. We hope that at some point we can use these real world comparisons just because these are very hard studies to do. And we already know that amivantamab and lazertinib is approved, so we have great safety data there. But the best we have right now is this real world comparison. So 69 patients were looked at in retrospective data in this real-world database, 49 patients on amivantamab lazertinib. And if you just look at this, the overall survival was significantly longer in patients who received Ami-Laz versus other TKIs. And those TKIs were, again, broken down between various ones, but the most common were osimertinib and afatinib. The overall survival in the Ami-Laz combination was not estimable for that versus 19.6 months with the real-world control arm. 24-month overall survival was 77% with Ami-Laz and only 41% with osimertinib and 55% with afatinib. Other endpoints were similar, so time to discontinuation and other metrics kind of led similarly. So based upon this, the majority of the endpoints that we look at, which is really overall survival, as well as 2-year progression-free survival and time to discontinuation, were higher with amivantamab lazertinib. We don't look at typical things like response rates because on the control arms, we're not really measuring true RECIST response rates, so you don't have that data. So we're really looking at outcomes. And again, survival and progression and discontinuation really are the most important outcomes that we can look at. And I think right now is a couple things. So right now it's not FDA approved for this indication. There may be off-label use. So I think there's a lot to be seen and determined as we go forward. Again, we would love to tell you that these drugs can be used right now. Again, some people may be able to get off-label use, kind of like osimertinib. So right now it's a long ways to go. I think it would be great to see a randomized study. Those things are really hard to do. A randomized study would be great if you could do that. Hopefully more anecdotal data. And again, I'm not going to speak for what other people can do. I think there's some hope that this may be able to get on NCCN guidelines where you can start using these drugs. Just because to do this in a randomized fashion is really hard to do. Again, osimertinib is the most common drug used right now, and there is no FDA approval. So I think that's most likely where we'll be going.